Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Master Chess Web Show. This has been uh, put together under some duress because Andrew has been doing jury service. And it's slightly the worse for wear. It's a lot harder than chess coaching.
Has at the edges.
So we're going to be nice to him this evening. Well, I'm going to try and be nice to him this evening, as nice as I can be.
Let's not get too far out of character.
Okay then. Right. So what we're doing today, Best of British. This is some highlights of British chess, and we've got 3 games for you. One of them, the first one, we were both actually in attendance for. It was the World Championship in 1993 between Nigel Short and Garry Kasparov. And we were both there in some function or other. I forget what exactly.
Well, I remember commentating with you for at least some of one of the sessions.
Oh, right. So I was there.
Not more than that.
Okay, so I was there partly.
You're actually there in the box of the Savoy Hotel, overlooking the whole theatre.
Right. So you were there commentating.
Yeah, we were commentating. There's all manner of commentators there. I remember commentating with Larry Evans and Miles. That was before he got thrown out for making anti-short remarks in the press room.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Raimondo was there, of course, and there was a potpourri of a galaxy of talent of British chess.
Yeah. This is when British chess was really buzzing. That was
give their two in commentary box.
Yeah, 1980s and 90s. Then we were a force, right?
Yeah, and so much a force that one of our number qualified for the final of the World Championship. Against Garry Kasparov. Of course, Michael Adams did that, didn't he? Some years later against Kazimzhanov. Yeah, I believe so.
Right. Okay.
I think it's widely recognised that Short's achievement in getting to the final against Kasparov is probably the highlight of British chess history so far.
Yeah.
And we've pulled out one of the games for you. I'm not sure. I'm sure I commentated on this game. This was at the point in the match where William Hill were giving better odds on the Martians landing than Short actually winning the match. So Nigel had to win quite a few games at this point to recover. And this is one of his. It's his only win from the match, I believe.
Yeah.
So Nigel, off you go.
Okay. Right. Pawn to e4. Best by test according to Bobby Fischer. And it was interesting actually that Nigel displayed a willingness to take Garry Kasparov in the very sharpest lines.
For sheer entertainment, this match I think eclipsed everything since Fischer-Spassky.
Yeah.
Even the Kasparov-Karpov match were not as entertaining as this because Short really went for it. He every game he was trying to blow Kasparov away, especially the Open Sicilian. Whether that was the correct approach or not, who knows? But okay, off we go, Nigel.
Right. Okay. So
got the wrong screen right now.
I got the wrong screen. Okay. Sorry, I just had a slight technical hitch there.
What's new on
there?
This
There we go. Is that the right screen? I think it is, isn't it?
Well, let's hope C5 is played.
I just had windows open everywhere, so I tried to close one.
Well, yeah, hooray! It is the right screen.
This is Kasparov played this not exclusively. He would also play e5, and I think he played the Caro-Kann in one Soviet championship. But the Sicilian became like his thing, and he always played the Najdorf. Now, in this day and age, that would be a pretty risky thing to do because you set yourself up as a target for engine analysis and preparation from people that are using very high powered engines. So whether or not he would have done this had he started out in this era, I don't know.
Well, of course, 30 years ago, Kasparov was the engine. He was using the early versions of ChessBase, but a lot of his analysis was being done by himself and his team, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was razor sharp analysis. I mean, he was the man at that time, and he couldn't be touched.
Yeah, and this new way of playing, making heavy use of preparation, I think that was really introduced by Kasparov. I mean, and since then engines became more powerful, and now they're using cloud engines and everything. I think this was one of the big things that Kasparov did that was different to everybody else. High-powered engine analysis, and when he was at his best, which I would say was probably in the 1980s, to be honest.
Yeah, and his matches against Karpov,
yeah.
The match in New York and Lyon, that was really a high point.
Yeah, when he was at his best with his brilliant calculating ability and fantastic sense for the initiative, this was a really potent combination, and I don't think anybody could really match it. So now we have Bishop C4,
which Short played several times in the match.
Yeah, Bobby Fischer's favourite move. The idea is that White is striking down on this diagonal, and it obviously develops a piece. You can, in this particular line, you'll normally castle kingside with White, but the line where you play the Sozin variation, Bishop C4, E6, Bishop E3, this is normally a queenside castling line.
Velimirovich attack.
Velimirovich attack. Sozin Velimirovich attack.
Let's see how it goes. Something like this, isn't it?
Yeah. Queen E2, castles.
And then A6.
Yeah. And
then you can choose between this or this.
B3.
Yeah? Or Bishop B3.
Right. I doubt Velimirovich would have prepared it with Rook G1. He would go straight in.
Nevertheless, I'm sure that is a move. The Nigel today is a completely different animal, isn't it? It's almost as if people are desperate to find other ways of meeting the move. I mean, we've seen all these weird moves like Rook G1 and A3 and H4. I mean,
well, the Danny Gormally show featured H4 by White, and
I think we've featured that ourselves in a show after that.
Yeah.
But these were in the days when they actually developed pieces, it's sacrilege these days if the computer doesn't like it. So Bishop C4 is quite an aggressive move.
Yeah, it certainly is. E6, Bishop B3, B5, castles, Bishop E7.
Now then, is that a slight nuance? Just going back 1 second, if I may, to Bishop E7.
Yeah.
You'd think that the natural move Bishop B7 here, but what is that an imprecision?
Well, there might be a danger when White defends his E pawn that he's going to do some sacrifice on E6. So I don't know if this is theory. This is me just making it up as I go along. Bishop takes E6.
Well, that's a disincentive to put the bishop on B7, isn't it? That type of sacrifice.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, didn't Fischer just go F4 in this position? Cheerfully sacrifice the pawn.
Yeah, you can probably do that as well.
Something like
this isn't really my territory.
Something like this.
Yeah.
There are obvious drawbacks to putting the bishop on B7. That's all I know. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but Bishop E7 kind of avoids all that.
Yeah.
By threatening the castle.
Yeah.
So let's carry on.
Okay. So Bishop E7, Queen F3.
I remember there was a tremendous sense of excitement every time Short had White in this match because you kind of knew he was going to go for it, and Kasparov was going to take him on.
Yeah.
So you're almost guaranteed a Najdorf, and it was high excitement all the way.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's really good when you get players with this uncompromising attitude, and I don't know what's happened with these 16 game matches. I mean, maybe just 16 games reduces players' appetite for risk. I
don't think you can compare these matches with the World Championship matches of today.
No.
It'll be a very unfavourable comparison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed. So Queen C7, Queen G3, hitting the G7 pawn Black goes knight c6, not worrying about that pawn. And I think the idea, knight takes c6, queen takes c6. Now, if white takes on g7, the answer would be rook g8, followed by, is he going to take on e4?
Well, let's have a look. So we take on g7. He plays rook g8. We have to play queen h6.
Yeah.
And now, is there anything wrong with taking on e4?
I don't see anything wrong with taking
unless queen takes h7 is.
Takes h7, rook takes g2 check. Well, there we go. There's a bit of gratuitous violence. Queen takes h7, rook takes g2 check, king takes g2, knight
g5 will do.
Check.
Oh dear. Nigel's on form tonight. I can see
it. Yeah, some sparkling discovered checks there. So
it's amazing. It's amazing that didn't happen in a World Championship match.
Well, I think it used to. You know, Le Bourdonnais, McDonnell and stuff. You know,
or possibly Steinitz v Blackburn.
Steinitz v Blackburn. Yeah. Those were good matches. The McDonnell matches were pretty interesting because McDonnell, they had no clocks, so McDonnell would think for ages, right? And this drove Le Bourdonnais crazy because McDonnell wouldn't move. You know, he would. It's like 3 days and McDonnell hadn't moved.
No wonder they had such long beards. Anyway, we can understand that move.
Yeah. Bishop b7, lining up on that diagonal, and you've got to. I mean, I'm starting to wonder. People have taken the g pawn here. Queen queen h6, castles queen side with compensation. Would you take Kasparov's g pawn? Given that he's the most famous attacking player in history.
Plus the fact that he had a reputation for exhaustive and excellent analysis, I probably would not have taken it.
Yeah, you'd have demurred.
But of course, one can discover new moves in this line as much as anything else. I think Short probably didn't do it because he wanted the initiative. That was it.
Yeah, they have been they have played some games in this, and
what number of the match was this? This has to be pretty late on in the match. I just wondered if he sacked Kovalik by that time, because of course that happened in the middle of this match, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it's not ideal. You know, you sack your trusted second who helped you win against Karpov, and I think it might have been. I mean, I think from what Nigel said and from what I remember from it, then Kovalik sort of felt he'd done his job in getting into the match against Kasparov and didn't fully believe in Nigel's ability to beat Kasparov. Why? And I think he needed he needed his second to believe totally that he could win. You know, but it's always going to be a tough, you know.
I mean, I just wonder who recommended this all-in approach. Really, maybe he just felt he was at his best playing with the initiative, and Kasparov or no Kasparov, he was going to do it that way.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, you know, Nigel's style has always been uncompromising.
Yeah.
When Kasparov ultimately lost his title to Vladimir Kramnik, I think that Kramnik's work with Kasparov actually helped him. He discovered, Kramnik, that he did not need to fear Kasparov in an endgame, in a boring position. So there was like a point at which Kramnik, you know, was trying to exchange queens. He was no longer playing the Sicilian or something against Kasparov. He would have the queens off. And the two major weapons he had in that match, the Berlin defense to the Rye Lopez, right, queen exchange, and the Bishop E3 Grunfeld,
yes,
queen exchange, right.
Yeah.
And I think it was a very deliberate thing, you know, because Kramnik felt he was stronger than Kasparov in endgames, and then
at least he's equal.
At the very least, his equal.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically to answer your earlier question, I think probably Nigel had prepared this before the match.
Yeah,
and doesn't take on G7 for precisely that reason.
Yeah, And he wouldn't want to play a move like f3 either, which I can see has been played by people. Right? They played f3 in this position, but
he did that quite soon. Anyway.
Oh, right. Okay.
He played a3.
Right.
Of course, that's to keep his e-pawn protected against the move b4 by black. But of course,
Right.
black can't play b4, can he? He can't play b4 yet because of bishop a4.
Right.
So
Rook d8 fascinates me because I now do wonder, apparently now he can't take on g7 because of rook g8, queen h6, d5, opening the position and taking aim at the g2 pawn.
it does look dangerous.
Yeah. I think if I had to play Kasparov, it would be like wall-to-wall London systems.
Well, let's have a look. Okay, I'll take it. Come on, let's prove it.
Right, knight takes d5.
No, you want to take with the bishop? I want to take with the knight, but maybe I'm...
Right.
Okay, take with the bishop.
Well, he takes with the rook anyway. He's just doing this.
Yeah. That is too dangerous, isn't it?
Well, it certainly doesn't look like a very pleasant prospect. We can follow this up a bit, actually.
What do you play? Queen h3?
Queen h3. Rook takes g2 check.
Oh, dear.
King f1. And now, oh, very nice.
This is it win, though.
You're on quite sparkling form today, considering the stress you've been under.
Must have been sending that guy to the chair that did it to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this does not look very healthy for.
Right. So so that explains why Nigel played f3 at this point. I did actually find the next maneuver very interesting. That after Castle's
bishop
h6, knight e8, king h1.
It's almost as if White has switched now to some sort of positional advantage where he's playing on the backward pawn on d6.
Yeah.
With black hoping to be passive.
Yeah, and you can argue for White that this pawn on d6 is a like semi-backward pawn,
which cannot be dissolved.
Yeah, but now he goes bishop g5 to exchange off the bishop, which would normally protect that pawn. And we're switching now to positional play where d6 is a definite weakness.
But Kasparov defends it with all he's got and then says to Short, well, what are you doing here?
Yeah, so he does that. White doubles.
Of course, he can triple, put his queen on d2. Yeah, here.
Yeah.
Well, this is a small bullet by Kasparov, hoping that Short will take the queens off.
Yeah.
Because taking the queens off actually then brings us to another very interesting point in the game, and a point at which this struggle of light square bishops is typical of the Sozin variation, the Sicilian.
Yeah.
All at once, White's bishop becomes hopeless.
Yeah.
And the bishop on b7 can often be a match-winning piece in the Sicilian, can't it, Nigel?
Oh, yeah.
It comes into the game at the right minute.
Yeah, and especially when White plays f4 to develop his attack, because when you do that, you weaken the e4 pawn.
I mean, how long is it going to take for White to get that bishop back into the game now?
1, 2, 3, 4 tempi.
Meanwhile, Black marches his king towards the middle.
Yeah, Black goes g5, king g7, king f6, and king e5.
Something like that,
yeah.
Yeah, and must stand a little bit better.
Yeah.
Anyway, White could never win. So back we go.
So queen e3, king g8, king g1, bringing his king close to the center. And now apparently Kasparov should have exchanged queens and played d5. Whereupon,
we take a look at that.
Yeah, so queen takes e3 check, rook takes e3, pawn to d5, ed, knight takes d5, rook ed3, knight f6.
Okay, this looks like steadily equal, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks
dead equal, really.
It's totally equal. Unless White can find some way of trying to attack Black's queenside pawns.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Kasparov had so much success in this match until this point that he may have played King F8 just with the intention of luring White into taking the queens and playing for a win. He may have seen that other line and just thought, that's too drawish, I'm going to play on. I mean, what have I got to lose? So he takes a small risk, but I mean, it's not much of a risk because what's White doing here?
Yeah. So after Queen F2, then he waits again with Bishop A8, and you wonder, can he still exchange queens and play D5, or is that now? It's because the rook has been drawn away in the other line. So
you have to see it against the background of Kasparov playing for a win, flat out. Even in this position.
So now, if you take the queens off and go here, then you're going to end up with an isolated pawn.
Yeah, and that's a terrible ending.
Yeah. So this was the right moment to trade queens.
If he wanted to draw.
Yeah, if you want to draw, then you do it now, because D5 doesn't leave you with an isolated pawn.
I mean, that would have suited Kasparov as far as the match went, but I think he was just in an uncompromising mood.
Yeah. Which,
of course, is okay for short because it means he can too play for a win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Queen.
I remember this. They were running short of time even at this point, I think.
Right. It's slightly surprising, because you'd have thought that the opening preparation would have gone to like move 15 at least or something, and then they played a bunch of quiet moves. So what were they spending the time on?
Well, I suppose all the nuances of the position. I mean, Kasparov plays G6 here, but I mean, it looks so straightforward.
That doesn't look right, because now White keeps the queens on.
Well, I suppose he just didn't want to do something like this.
Yeah, but that looks solid. He had a good lead at the time. Draw a game with Black, and look forward to your next White.
Yeah.
But I think there could have been like some element of overconfidence in Kasparov. I think that everybody felt that Kasparov was going to win, right? And if including Nigel second, who'd probably become former second at this point.
I can't remember the
exact moment.
Timeline. Okay, so White's threatening bishop takes e6. This is important to point out.
Yeah. So Queen e5 is played, and now White played Rook e1. Is he threatening f4 now, followed by Bishop takes e6?
Well, on f4, if you want to avoid that, you've got to go Queen h5, haven't you?
Well, he goes g5. Yeah, f4, Queen h5, Bishop takes e6 still.
Yeah.
With a very unpleasant situation for Black.
Well, obviously, Black is a little bit apprehensive about that. So, but again, we can see this as Kasparov playing for the win.
Yeah.
Massing of pieces on the king side, obviously taking a bit of a risk in playing this way, because d6 is still there, waiting to be attacked. And now Short plays an excellent move, a4.
Yeah. This is the issue when you play b5. There can be situations where White starts to loosen up your queen side by playing a4, and well, this is that moment. And
now Kasparov goes for it.
Yeah, but I think you could
see they were in time trouble. This feels like I remember this game. There's some sort of time pressure at the end, because Kasparov goes off the rails. He probably had no time. Yeah. And yet he was still trying to win this game.
Didn't it emerge after the match that Kasparov was had some difficulties in his personal life while the match was going on?
Oh, I can't remember.
All right, okay. We won't speculate on that any further.
So here he comes.
Yeah, h4. Knight d4.
Knight gets his
b5 pawn
ready for action.
And Kasparov does not wish to defend.
Well, this is a nice point, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pressure now starts to tell.
Indeed. So he goes all in with G4. Well, he probably has to, as you say.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out here that if black defends, then I think this is the crusher, isn't it?
Well, that looks like a queen fork, king and queen fork.
Looks quite strong, doesn't it?
Looks very strong, even.
So G4, Tim Wall will be delighted. If you
Rook
saw
takes
Tim Wall
B5.
go, you'll know he likes this move. Rook takes B5. Oh dear.
Right, and then you can do queen takes H2 check for black, but you still end up a pawn down.
And black's attack is at an end.
Yeah, and this pass pawn, this B pawn, is probably going to win the game for white.
I think white would be better, even if he wasn't a pawn up.
Yeah.
But he is a pawn up. So we can... And here comes the mistake, isn't it? Or is the next move a mistake? D5.
Right. Queen. Now queen takes H4.
It's looking very fishy now.
Yeah.
Queen H5, the losing move. This has to have been time trouble. I think I recall this, although it was 30 years ago almost. Yeah, if he takes this pawn, apparently this is the move.
Right.
And if he takes this one, the cool King F1, amazingly. With complications.
Rook takes H2, knight F5 check. Oh, there's a check on B4.
Beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, great stuff. So queen takes H4. He goes queen H5.
Yeah, now this lovely move, knight F5
check. So you can, finish matters off. So if he Kasparov resigned at this moment, probably wasn't a happy bunny.
Much wailing and gnashing of teeth.
He takes F5. He takes F5 check. King F8. Queen takes F6 with the lethal threat of Rook B8 checkmate.
And William Hill scrambling to improve the odds on a Martian landing.
That's a great game, and I think, I mean, had Nigel taken the lead with that game, had this been earlier in the match and he'd taken the lead with that, it could have been a very different outcome. I mean, as it happened, then I think he was pretty well behind, wasn't he, when this game was played?
That's
so,
right.
You know, so it was something of a consolation prize. But
well, I mean, we joke, but the fact is that Nigel did something no other British player ever had done.
Possibly ever will do. Oh, well, Staunton was world champion. Well, kind of.
Well, you can't compare it to the path Nigel had to the summit, you know, meeting all these great players.
Yeah.
And so it seems fitting to reward that that tremendous achievement with one of his victories.
Yeah, indeed.
And any win against Kasparov at that time was a major achievement.
Absolutely. So shall we move on to the Shirov Nunn game?
Yes. Now then, we have John Nunn.
Two arch tacticians playing each other. Right. And you know, I think this is always going to be this kind of matchup is always going to be a battle. Who is the best calculator?
Yes, Nunn at that point, of course, was one of the world's top players.
Yeah.
Shirov's rating 26.95 against 26.15. You have to understand that back in those days. What was the date of this game? Do you have it right there? 1990s, was it?
Do I have it? Let me just check.
Anyway, the point is that a 26.95 rating in those years was absolutely massive.
Yeah.
You know, there were not that many players of that caliber around.
Yeah, it was Amsterdam 1995. I think it was the 5th round of Amsterdam, Donna Memorial. So right. Shirov was flying high at that time. I mean, was he number 3 in the world at that time?
Yeah, something like that. Wasn't he?
Yeah, very, very high.
So this can be regarded as a theoretical duel, really, with Nunn defending his beloved King's Indian, and Shirov playing this Mar del Plata variation, which remains one of the highly analysed main lines of the King's Indian, if not the most highly analysed. It's almost as if whole games can be played from this position where not a single original move is tried.
Yeah.
And then I remember back then, this was the line, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Korchnoi used to play this all the time, and he had various different ways of playing it. He would play bishop e3 before knight e1, or he might play a4 before knight e1. There are all sorts of different ways to play this.
Yeah.
But this was the line that was coming into vogue, with White putting his bishop on e3, and Black thinking to himself, that bishop's a target, so why shouldn't I attack it? But actually, I think Nunn also played, if my memory serves me correctly, King h8 here, didn't he?
Possibly.
I'm pretty sure that he did. And the idea of that is to get the knight on e7 back into the game. The knight on e7 is a problem piece for Black.
Yeah.
This variation. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, I don't know the exact move order, but I'm pretty sure I've seen Nunn do something like this.
Well, you might also be able to do it after f5, f5, f3, then play King h8.
Yes, you could. Yeah, same sort of thing.
That would be quite similar. I mean, people who are like experts on the theory of this are probably disappointed in our lack of detailed theoretical knowledge.
But it has to be said, I mean, let's give White a move that after knight g8, Black may be threatening a move like bishop h6.
Yeah. You want to trade off that bishop. Sometimes this is the best bishop on the board in the King's Indian, but sometimes it gets blocked in behind his.
What you've got to be very, very careful of when you trade off this bishop is that something like this suddenly doesn't happen, and you get completely crushed on the dark squares. You've got to be. I mean, that may not work now. That may not work now, but that sort of recipe, especially with a knight on d3, could distract Black from that plan. So it may be that a move like this is more common, and put the knight on h5 first, and then look to do other things.
Yeah.
But that's all a bit slower, of course, in comparison with what happens in the game, where Black just motors forward on the king side, and White motors forward on the queen side.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of these positions in general?
Oh, well, I mean, I always like to attack the king. Right? If I've got a choice, I don't like to mess around with a pesky queen side. I like to go for the king. So my personal preference, if I was forced to play this position with either side, I would go for Black. But the big problem for me, and I think it's been that way for quite some time, is that there's just so much theory in the King's Indian, and I just don't want to spend all day every day looking at the King's Indian and all the theory involved.
I remember playing Bogdan Lalic in Overwatch in a tournament in 1990, just after I'd written my book on the King's Indian, and we went down the line like this in the Mar del Plata variation, and he just improved on something I'd written in the book on about move 30.
Yeah.
So at that point, I thought to myself, "Well, bugger this. I've had enough of playing full games where you don't get to play a single original move."
Yeah.
And that is the issue with this variation. I mean, White doesn't want to be mated, so it's clear they're going to analyze the variation and come up with defensive ideas, or not go into this.
Yeah. You don't get much of a life while you're doing this,
Well, Nunn played rook f6.
Yeah. So this is a good old-fashioned rook lift. Coming to g6, and then he's going to hoik his g-pawn forwards.
White ignores him completely.
Yeah.
Nigel knows what he's talking about. Pawn takes pawn.
Yeah.
And now, interestingly, Nunn takes back with the knight.
Yeah. So this at least avoids the opening of the seat for the time being. Right. And
let's just show that. So if he takes this,
yeah, then your c file is open, and White may play knight b5, right, attacking your a7 pawn. then if you go a6, maybe he does something horrid to us like bishop b6.
Well, I think actually this is something that happened. I think this reminds me of my game against Lalic, something like this.
Ah,
And if I take this, you go here.
ah.
And White gets some sort of compensation. I mean, there's probably a better way to do it. I don't know. But the position doesn't look that great for Black after pawn takes pawn, does it?
I played the King's Indian, I don't know if you remember, around the time we went to Perpignan for a tournament.
Oh, yes, I remember that well.
Right, Perpignan. And
don't eat the menu gastronomique, as far as I recall.
Menu gastronomique. And I was playing the King's Indian then, but I'd actually prepared it, which was like a really easy peasy job in those days, compared with, what was happening even 5 years after that. And that was about the time that I also started moving away from the King. It's like 1 year I was a King's Indian player, and then I wasn't really anymore after that.
Just had enough of it.
Yeah, well, it's just too much. I found people were preparing, they were ready, and that was my best time as a king. I sometimes played it out of desperation after that because I had nothing else to play. Right, but I hadn't discovered the joys of the Queen's Gambit decline and stuff at that time.
No, well,
I should still play exciting. So anyway, knight
to d3.
Yeah, getting ready
to get on with it.
c5, and here Stockfish actually likes White after pawn to g3, which I found unbelievable.
Ending with 32, knight takes e4.
Indeed.
Absolutely scandalous that Shirov didn't see that.
Yeah, it just shows that Shirov isn't that good a calculator.
Shall we refrain from looking at that and come back to the natural bishop h4?
Yeah. So now we have Queen f8.
Black is in a pin. Black gets out of the pin.
Yeah. Pawn to g3. Bishop f6.
Nunn has a bad bishop. He gets rid of the bad bishop.
Rid of it. F takes g4.
This chess commentary is an absolute breeze, isn't it?
Well, we're just saying the moves here. Right. Now we
Shirov doesn't realise a knight is worth 3.5 and a pawn worth 1.
Yeah.
So he gives up a knight.
Yeah.
Would that be an accurate statement?
Indeed. And I think he was probably expecting to have enough compensation for it.
Well, he gets 3 pawns.
Yeah.
It is an interesting position arises.
Yeah.
Of course, one thing we have to say about Nunn is he is a fabulous, well, he was a fabulous calculator, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Just tremendous. And, I always found it frustrating that when you played somebody that was like, just a really good calculator, through nature's gifts, that you would just be outgunned. No, I don't know if that has happened to you ever.
Well, I don't have hardly any good results against Nunn at all.
Yeah.
So I've got nothing to say on that count.
Yeah. I did badly against him as well. So I never played Shirov.
He took this.
Yeah.
And here we have 3 pawns for the piece.
Yeah. But Black now has some activity, and in particular, his knight goes to g6 from where it can potentially hop in to a really good square on e5.
I think Shirov misjudged this position. He probably felt after this, with rook f1 in the offing, he was doing well. Maybe.
I mean, to be fair, I think this is an absolute nightmare to try and assess, because how do you even start? Black's king is open. Who would I prefer? Well, I know Black won, so I'm gonna say, I prefer Black.
Although Stockfish recommends h4 here.
Yeah.
Queen g7.
With a smaller disadvantage for White.
It's very hard to judge.
Yeah, I mean, I would find it very, very difficult to make any kind of assessment. The thing that does annoy me, if I was White, what I would be annoyed about would be the e5 square.
Excuse me, I press the wrong button there.
Right.
I'll get back to it. Don't worry.
Right. Okay. I'll leave that bit to you.
There we are.
There we go.
Yes.
So rook f1 apparently is a mistake. It looks like the most natural move in the world.
Well, I would play rook f1. I don't know about you.
Yeah. King g2.
And now king g7, protecting the knight.
g7. Well, I understand protecting the knight.
The control of e5 is fundamental, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
Aspects of the position.
Yeah. Now, apparently, rook f4 is a blunder. Right. And
yeah, it does look a bit like white being flash.
Yeah. And knight c4 then threatens to bring the knight to e5 or e3 check when, you know, when if white doesn't move the queen, of course.
But even if white goes rook f2, knight c4 anyway.
Yeah.
And this is not easy to meet.
Once these knights are protecting the king on g6 and e5, then I am no longer liking white. Well, you know, I wasn't sure about the position, but I do start to clearly like black, I would say. You know, notwithstanding all these computer annotations that we put in, you know, the knight c4 to e5 would really trigger my human intuition and say white's position stinks.
Well, it's not only e5 that's the problem, it's e3.
Yeah.
And thus white does not seem to have any sort of knockout blow.
Yeah.
And his pieces are just, although they look impressive, they're not actually doing anything.
Yeah.
So this move is to sidestep knight e3, but now he gets hit with queen d2 check. And now white's king has to run the gauntlet.
This position required very accurate calculation because, I mean, my instinctively, I would think, oh, well, the queen is so nice on e5 protecting f6. Why am I moving it to d2 where I might get hit by some rook f7 check, something or other? So he would have had to work all of this out.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think this bit was too difficult to work out. But the last move is very nice. This move, knight to d3. Threatening knight c5, mate.
Yeah.
Mate with the two knights. And that works.
Yeah.
Whatever white does.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a beautiful idea.
Yeah. So rook takes f8, you just take the queen.
Why can't I play knight c5, mate?
Is that mate, or can you go king f5 out of mate?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I'll take the queen then.
I would take the queen.
Good advice. And master perform.
I must remind the audience that Andrew has had a tough day.
Yeah, that was terrible, making the guy walk the plank.
Ah, well. So onwards and upwards. Now we've got this very famous game. I think this is one of the most quoted games ever. Right, and it's quoted a lot because of Tony Miles's outrageous first move.
No, it's not. This is not that game.
Oh, it's not that game. Oh,
no,
right.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah, right. I just assumed it was that one.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Right. Okay.
It's another game he played in European Team Championship. European Team Championship in Bath, 1983.
Right, okay. I didn't even look at the game because I assumed it was the A6 game.
Shocking. Don't make that admission on a live show.
I better edit that out. So, so we have I think, was this the only other game he won against Karpov?
Again, I don't know.
Right.
But what was interesting, of course, was that he ventured the Nimzo Larsen variation of the Caro-Kann. G takes F6.
Yeah.
Back in those days, you could play these lines.
Yeah. Well, I think Nigel Short, interestingly enough, has dabbled with this line. In fact, the move that's all the rage right now is to take with the e pawn.
I remember Julian Hodgson liked this line.
Yeah.
G takes F6.
Yeah, they've been doing e takes F6 now.
Mm.
When your king at least is going to be well defended.
Well, this went in out of fashion, didn't it?
Yeah.
Back in the late 1980s, 1990s.
Yeah.
I remember Keane writing an article on this in a magazine called Modern Chess Theory.
Well, it looks like a pretty solid line, actually.
Well, Korchnoi started playing it as well, didn't he?
Yeah, played it in several games.
Yeah.
Well, look, one of the important things to remember is you need to keep your dark squared bishop to blockade a white d pawn. And so and sometimes what you can even do, this is a digression, by the way. when Mike goes c4 on d5, you can even have your bishop on d6 and play c5 and leave him with
there's some new move, isn't there, in this line?
Yeah. Well, there were a couple
Something crazy. It's something like this, isn't it?
Yeah, rook e8, queen c2, h5.
Yeah, this move. What is all that about?
Yeah, well, he's not allowing his h pawn to be protected. But there's another crazy move as well. There's also this move.
Wow.
Fashionable.
You sure about that?
I am sure about that.
What if white takes it?
You exchange bishops. And then I believe you go like knight d7.
You just lost a pawn, right?
I know I lost a pawn, but one of my teammates at last 4 NCL faced this.
White's piece is so clumsy.
Yeah, or maybe knight b6 to come to c4.
I see. Just claim compensation.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
And queen d3, so like queen h4.
I'll play on.
Yeah. So, that's a pretty fashionable line. G takes f6 has, like disappeared from the face of the earth almost, except for adventurous players like Nigel Short. His repertoire, by the way, has become like increasingly wide as all the computerization has taken place. I think he's placing ever greater value on the on surprise.
Well, of course, back in those days, playing this against Karpov was really daring, because Karpov had the reputation of being able to seize on any weakness and exploit it ruthlessly to his own advantage.
Yeah.
And so, Black is banking on active pieces and aggressive early middle game play to compensate for his pawn structure.
Yeah.
So what did Karpov play? He just played it simple.
Yeah. Knight f3.
Now Miles played bishop f5.
Yeah.
Bishop f4.
Knight d7, c3.
Yeah, queen b6.
Yeah, this is to prepare queenside castling and e5.
Yeah, sure. Just Karpov's next move is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks quite.
I mean, you think that White might play here? Is there anything wrong with that?
Well, he's sacrificing a pawn in theory.
Well, yeah. Are you really going to take that?
Well, probably not. The computer is queen b5 after queen takes d3.
Yeah.
Well,
we can go c4, I suppose.
Maybe there's like an e5 as well. You do e5 and castle queenside. With so we get something like, or just castle queenside.
Could do.
And be ready for e5 with just blasting away with your howitzers in the center.
Well, blast away.
Yeah, probably not going to work, is it?
It was a nice try though for at least 10 seconds.
Yeah. So,
anyway, this b4 move. The point is that Karpov is provoked in. I mean, would he normally play that move? Wow.
Well, it looks very loose, doesn't it?
e5, bang.
Yeah. Bishop g3. Presumably.
So if White takes that pawn,
are we gonna castle long?
So if he takes the pawn, you're going to castle long, aren't we?
Absolutely.
And now White may regret his move b4.
He may well indeed.
I think Black's just got far too much compensation here.
Well, White's behind in development, and he has weakened his queen side.
Yeah, so that explains just coolly dropping the bishop back.
Yeah.
And now Stockfish doesn't like Miles's next move, which looks 100% natural.
Yeah, wants to play a5 instead.
Jabbing at the pawns.
Yeah. I think we can forget that. Everybody on this show would castle queenside, I would say.
Fine. So bishop e2.
Yeah.
And now Miles sticks it to him again.
Yeah.
Well, he's obviously convinced that Karpov is at his weakest when he's having to play against sharp positions. He's always trying to stabilise the position and go for a nibble or some sort of edge. And,
yeah, or just just like primitive English chess against all this sophisticated Soviet technique.
Crazy pawn structures, jabs all over the place at the pawns. And he's right, probably.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, Miles, the famous 1A6 game, I think he was trying to ruffle Karpov's feathers.
Yes.
He just didn't want to give him like an easy life. He just sort of, none of this civilized positional play.
So knight d2. Castles first.
Castles, bishop e4.
b4.
Knight d2.
Knight d2. And now bishop d5. Incredibly provocative stuff.
Yeah. And it has to be noted, he wants to play pawn to h4 here.
Well, he's also left this pawn lying around.
I know, but that's an H file.
I realise to the modern player, this is just nothing. The H file is open. That's the end of the game. But yeah, well, a pawn is a pawn.
Yeah, he takes d4, pawn to c4, bishop e6, pawn to a3, and now knight e5. Yeah, Stockfish felt it fit appropriate to give that an exclamation mark. It doesn't generally like giving humans exclamation marks at all, but I think it puts the occasional one in to avoid being switched off.
I think while that bishop remains on g3, I don't mind White's position, but in every other respect, I quite like black.
Yeah, White's king is safe, but then
pass pawn in the middle for black.
Yeah,
very active pieces.
Yeah, very active pieces, well centralized pieces.
Threatening to take on c4, maybe.
Yeah.
So he pushes. He goes rook e1. Okay, so
pawn to d3.
Might be worth showing why black can't take on c4. So he takes with the knight.
Is it rook takes e6?
Well, I was hoping.
Knight takes d2, bishop takes f7.
Can he even play this?
Very possibly.
And now that bishop on g3 does look strong.
Yeah, the knight can get out via e4, but after bishop takes f7, can it get out at all? Yeah, so if we do, just hold your horses a minute here. Rook takes e6, knight takes d2, bishop takes f7. Where does the knight get out? I can go to c4, I suppose. But then is there going to be some mayhem?
Well, queen g4 looks very strong after that.
Looks tremendous because he can't
the attack.
Yeah, he can't move his king away.
That bishop on g3 is killing him.
Yeah.
So that's probably the answer.
Yeah.
So Miles pushes on. Nice move.
Yeah. Another exclamation mark from Stockfish. Right. Doesn't like that one though. Says queen a6. Queen a6 would be when you played all these big, sort of aggressive moves, then you don't really want to put the queen on a6. Says the position's like equal after queen a6.
Well, let's proceed. It's a normal move, really, despite what the computer says. Rook b1.
Yeah. Bishop h6.
Bishop comes out to h6.
Now he wants to play f4 for white.
And now a4, once again, a very natural move. Queen a6. And now f4.
Yeah.
After which you can say that both sides are giving no quarter.
And this appears to be the mistake, that white should have played bishop f3 instead of taking on b5.
Right. b7's a little bit tender, isn't it?
b7 is very tender. So what? Right, it's because black then, after rook takes b5, can play knight a3, whereas now, after bishop f3, he doesn't play knight a3 because of. So then if black was to go here in this position, then white would play a takes b5 instead of rook takes. Or rook.
Well, what's wrong with a takes b5?
Yeah, a takes b5.
Knight takes.
Is there a rook a1 causing a bit of an accident?
Yeah.
Well, so rook takes b5, knight a3, rook b2, and now black goes in with knight c2.
Well, yeah.
And suddenly white's position is much less well organized than it used to be.
I think Miles has just created a random position, hasn't he? And you know, has assessed that this is the best chance to beat Karpov.
Yeah.
There's no technical win here. It's just completely wild, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that this might have been Miles's career mistake, that he started going increasingly for like chaos and sidelines and whatever, rather than taking the big boys on, you know, because Miles was a really good endgame player. You know, Miles was phenomenal at endgames, right? And I spoke to Kevin Spraggett once, and he said that because Tony went to Kevin Spraggett one time to try and get help with clawing back, you know, his strength. And, you know, I think Kevin wasn't really sure that he was going to be able to do it. But, you know, I think one of the reasons he cited was that Miles was going too much for, like, you know, silly sidelines.
I don't think he ever recovered from that drubbing he got from Kasparov.
Yeah, that was
in Basel, 1986, I think it was.
Yeah.
And you know, losing 5-1. I mean, just any hopes you've got to become the world champion are just being dashed. You know, that you just think, I can never beat this guy.
Yeah,
that sort of attitude.
Well, I think Ulf Anderson went through something similar, but he took it. You know, Ulf's a pretty calm person, but he sort of decided at that point he just didn't want to play games against Kasparov. He's just too strong. You know, you know, and the whole style thing as well. Kasparov's style was sort of very unpleasant for somebody like Ulf, who liked you know, sort of nice peaceful game, angling for end games. Instead, you've got the whole board on fire in front of you.
The thing is, against Karpov, you know, Miles could have a reasonable hope of playing sharp stuff and getting away with it, and even winning the game. But against Kasparov, that's playing right into his strength.
Oh yeah,
and he would have no hope whatsoever.
Yeah. So what do? You know, you're outgunned in just about every department. I mean, Miles is the area where he was probably closest to Kasparov was in the end game, but I don't think he was like a better end game player than Kasparov. I think, you know, it was just the phase where he was comparable.
Well, now we're coming to the point where Karpov makes his fatal mistake.
And he goes for the wild rook B takes B7 instead of the normal rook E takes B7.
Yeah, now I found that tough to understand.
It's like totally out of character. Do you think he just sort of lost it? I can play attacking chess as well.
No, I think he was afraid of this.
Right, but now there's Queen G4 check.
Yeah.
F5, Queen G5 with...
He may have underestimated his own defensive resources. I mean, this is not easy to see, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
With Queen D4 in the offing and all that sort of thing.
Kasparov would have seen that. This is exactly the kind of area where Kasparov would have, I think...
Karpov, you mean?
No, if Kasparov was playing it,
yeah.
he would have seen that. Whereas Karpov, you know, with all this random chaos and so much of it in one game. So suddenly he's giving up the exchange and it doesn't work.
Which he takes. Thank you very much.
And now goes Queen C6, consolidating.
A nice move.
Yeah. Threatening Queen C5 check. Now he takes with the rook. And suddenly Karpov's back rank is a real problem.
Even though Stockfish doesn't like that move. Because now I really didn't understand that. His next move is a mistake, I think. I mean, he may have been in time trouble.
Yeah, rook takes F5.
Just go here.
Is equal. Apparently is equal. Could have been both sides.
Again, that depends on, you know, at first sight, this looks losing for white to me.
Yeah, he keeps checking that.
But then
Queen D5.
Something like this, nice centralization, and if this, we get a check, and so on.
Well, yeah. So
I suppose the lesson to be learned from this is that anybody can be beaten, providing you create the type of position they don't like. The art is to be able to do it.
Yeah, and even with Kasparov, you know, with Kramnik's observation.
Well, that's Kramnik, what Kramnik did, what Miles failed to do.
Yeah.
Or anybody had failed to do to that point.
Yeah.
So Queen comes into G7. Rook E8.
Yeah. And now H4.
Which understandably gives his king some room, but now
Mate on G2.
There are some problems. Mate on G2, there are knight G4 check in the wings, his rook C1 check in the wings. It's very doubtful whether actually now white can defend himself.
Yeah.
So he blocks the, he hits the knight and defends the pawn with his queen.
Yeah.
Check. This was what he couldn't stop. And now just the calm rook, knight takes F2.
Yeah.
Okay, so if he takes it,
then
rook E2
check.
And mate next move.
Yeah.
So knight F3, but now of course it's awful. Black's just a rook up now.
Yeah, whole rook.
The pawn must promote. Not on my watch.
Knight takes D2 and white is left with nothing.
No.
And I mean, I guess he resigned at this point. There's no record of him losing on time, to the best of my knowledge. Crushing win.
So we've seen games from some of England's finest ever players this evening. Nigel Short, John Nunn, Tony Miles. I'm sure we could go on to show games from many England players. I think we will do in the future because there are so many fascinating games and sharp encounters that we can feature. So
Harold Bird is one that I quite like.
Which one?
Harold Bird.
Harold Bird.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
his games at in the where were they playing in London? The Simpsons Divan. Because Harold Bird, they used to play each other for a chop, like pork chop. or lamb chop.
Oh.
Just to play each other for dinner, you know. There was so, which could be useful, of course. So, yeah, okay. Well, thanks for that selection, Andrew. Very interesting, and good luck. Good luck tomorrow.
I should fill you in on. You heard Nigel say good evening at the start of this show. That's because we're actually pre-recording it. You'll see it on Tuesday morning, but we're actually pre-recording this show. So
because
that explains it.
You could still be in.
I could still be in court. Yes.
Yeah.
Thinking up all manner of ways to punish offenders, but there you are.
Yeah.
So thanks, Nigel. It was a good show.
Thank you, Andrew.
And, to the audience, hope you enjoyed it. It was fun for us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Cheers.